Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Today I'm excited to share with you a conversation between myself and Anne. Anne Fricke was a guest way back on the Special Needs Mom podcast. We talked about writing for special needs moms, and not like writing to write a book, but really she is a writer, she's an author, and has such a beautiful way of relating to writing. She approached me recently because she has stepped into a new venture, which is what I'm calling a collaborative of resources for special needs moms. And it's so beautiful what she's pulled together. She has such a spirit of abundance and collaboration and a genuine desire to help those who are somewhere along the path as a special needs mom. I think most of us, in the beginning especially, felt very alone and what I would call under-resourced. Like, you know you need help, but when you go out and look, you don't find a lot. That is one of the reasons why I started the Special Needs Mom podcast. Our guest today, she was one of the OGs. She is also the host of Walking with Freya, which is a podcast she's hosted for the last 5 years. I believe she's on a little bit of a hiatus, but there's a lot of wealth in those episodes. So I encourage you to go check that out. I'll definitely have a link in the show notes. So the episode today was inspired because Anne approached me about this opportunity to share with the listeners of this podcast the new website resource that she's created called Breathe. It's an acronym. I'll let her share more about it. But I wanted to make sure that we spread this to the community because I think it's really worth your while. While we were at it, of course, we talked about that resource, but while we were at it, we caught up. I feel like this episode has a flavor of just two moms talking, and we're really talking about the things that are happening in our lives, the hard parts of our life. Specifically, we both talk about pushing harder than is comfortable for us at school. So we just have this dialogue that I think you'll find if you were sitting along with us, you would be able to contribute and to relate and to really be part of the conversation. We also talk about this interesting dynamic that both of us have different parts and experiences of, and that is how to honor our children in the way that we talk about them. This actually will be a nice little tag along from the conversation from episode number 134. I think what you're going to find is that you may not be here now because of the age of your child, but my hope is that this conversation kind of puts in a seed for how you evolve as a mom of a parent to your child when they have wishes and desires that are different from yours. And so hopefully it'll kind of give you a little bit of preparedness for what is to come. And then we talk a little bit about being with the heartbreak of watching our children grieve their own disabilities. Her daughter has different disabilities than my son, but each of them have shared with us in different ways how they are grieving and really processing the reality, the acceptance that they have disabilities. Okay, well, I can think of no better thing to do now than get right into the conversation. One thing before we get into the episode, I wanted to mention that there's a couple parts of the audio that are not my normal standards. So bear with me and I'll figure out what happened so that we can make sure that future episodes have great audio. And I'm excited to welcome you back to the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's been a couple years, I don't know, maybe a year since our last conversation. And ultimately, I wanted to have you back on the show so that you could share some resources that you've been pouring your heart and soul into. And so we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But in the meantime, I wanted to kind of have a mom-to-mom conversation about what's coming up for us in our lives. We had briefly talked about this prior to recording, and I think it's going to be a really rich conversation. You shared with me a little bit about how you are currently in process of advocating for your daughter to have a one-on-one aide full-time. Is that correct? Full-time?
Yes. Yeah. Full-time.
Yeah. And it's already been denied one time. Mm-hmm. And you've shared with me that you won't stop until she has what she needs. So I wanted to have a conversation about pushing harder than we're comfortable with. I'll share briefly that I am in the process, the IEP process for my son as he's in 8th grade and then going into high school next year. And this IEP feels really important. Also, last year, if I look at the IEP process and I'm like, why does this feel so different? I'm like, oh yeah, we were headed into radiation and brain surgery last year at IEP season. So naturally I was kind of like, yeah, IEP, whatever.
Right.
So I'm in a different space this year. So how is it going for you? What's coming up for you as you advocate and as you navigate this process with your daughter?
Yeah, well, I'll say I have tried to get an aide already. She is in a classroom. She's mainstreamed in a classroom at a lovely school. I love the school. My oldest daughter went there. My youngest goes there. It's a great school, and they've always been great advocates for Freya, and the IEPs are always really pleasant and feel heard. My daughter is loved and appreciated by the teachers. There's like this good rapport. And there is a kid in the classroom who has an aide, which is actually his mother, who's a friend of mine, because he is diabetic. And so there's always been extra help. So it's been kind of this thing of like, okay, she's going to need an aide at some point, probably, but there is this extra help there. And, my friend really does get to kind of focus on Freya. And then, but I went ahead and I asked for the aide, and I didn't push that hard. I don't feel like, I wrote a lovely letter. I'm a writer, so I wrote a lovely letter about why she needs
use
one.
the skills you have.
Yeah.
It's great.
And we had a meeting, and the meeting was kind of like, okay, well, pretty much they were like, we're not going to give her an aide. We don't think she needs a one-on-one. We're going to give her extra supervision at mealtime. She already had that. We're going to make sure she has extra supervision here and here and here. So I felt okay with that. And then it didn't come out to and that was last year, beginning of last school year. And then Freya takes some time to process things. And so at the beginning of this year, we learned that some things had happened on the playground last year. And I'm not going to go into all of that, but that started this second round of she needs an aid. So what I did this time, I was still I'm from the Midwest, from very non-confrontational parents. So, so I do everything very politely. It's kind of that kill them with kindness. I reached out to the state association, the national association. I reached out to Dr. Miller, who is the PWS specialist. I got letters from everybody. And then I wrote another letter. And I did say very kindly in that letter, I've already asked for an aid. If she had had one, this wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But, still very polite. I don't know what it is, whatever. I'm a people pleaser. I just don't like confrontation. It was still really hard, but those letters were a way of me saying, I've got support.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll take this further if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And she's now in the process of they're evaluating her at the school. They've all pretty much said, they can't officially say it yet, but they're like, she's going to get the aid. And my response is, I know she's getting the aid because there's no other option at this point. I don't know what that looks like. If I don't really imagine that they're going to say no, but if they do, I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's not going to be as pretty and polite.
So. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much just for sharing the snapshot of what you're experiencing. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this was I'm going through a very similar situation, not necessarily with advocating to getting an aid. We already have an aid most of the day, but there's just some areas where I have a different view than the IEP does. It's funny because I would not have necessarily identified as a people pleaser. I mean, I think everybody has parts of that. I wouldn't have ranked myself super high on the scale. And what I'm learning is that there's something about the IEP process that really triggers my desire to people please. Like it's really a hard area for me to be unapologetic about what I'm asking for and what I'm essentially saying is needed. Without going into too many details, there's a proposed goal on the IEP for my son that really hit me the wrong way. Like it actually, like I viscerally felt it in my body. Like it triggered me because it hit on something that is so sensitive as I parent him that I'm like, don't you mess with this part of my son. And as I continue to process it, helped me realize, I'm like, oh, they don't understand his disability. Because I couldn't figure out exactly why it had hit me so wrong. But back to the support piece, I had scheduled a meeting with somebody that we work privately with to support Levi and, said, hey, I want to have a special consult for the IEP specifically. And so I had an hour to discuss with her what was going on here. And she also, because of her expertise, helped me realize and really put words to what I had felt. And it was so helpful because I felt like no longer is it me against this room of professionals. It's like, I got this other professional that I trust deeply and that knows my son deeply to really help me put words to where we have a gap in our agreement on the IEP. But before I had that conversation with her, I just felt like, I don't know, there's something about the IEP is that they know more than I do because they're educational professionals and I am not. Like, I know I'm the expert on my son, but we're talking about the goals and all the things. Like I just get a little, I get a little turned around. So anyhow, that's kind of me just downloading my thoughts and my experience. So thank you for sharing yours.
Yeah. I have a few suggestions on why maybe you feel this need to
let's
be
talk about it.
Polite in the IEP. Because I feel this as well. Like, and I reckon it's kind of in the beginning that like one of my desires of, not only am I just kind of a non-confrontational, just I need to be nice kind of person, but I never wanted there to be any kind of like ill feeling or frustration or any negative feeling towards me that would then turn
Mm-hmm.
on my daughter. And I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to say that, these are all professionals and they know what they're doing. We're all human, like things happen. And so I never wanted to like push anybody to the point of where they just were frustrated and it ended up having repercussions on my daughter. So I just wonder if I know that's what it is for me sometimes. And then also I just heard this thing and I don't know if I'm going to get it right, but it was talking about how people who like when you go out on the street and you say hi to somebody or you smile at a stranger and if they smile back that you actually have this like you have something in your body that tells you, oh, I'm safer now. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have like
Mm-hmm.
when you're making those connections you feel safer in the world. And so I think that because IEPs in those situations are so emotionally charged and so heavily staked, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but there's so much importance put on them that we need it to go really well. We need everybody to be on board. We need everybody to love our child.
That's really interesting. Just the idea, because I think that actually is probably for me the leading reason why it's so uncomfortable is because like we go to a small-ish school. It's a smallish community. All of my other children go there, so you're in the same situation.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to create a situation that doesn't, I don't know. I mean, this is like my desire to control coming out. It's like I don't want to create a situation that doesn't like work for everybody. And I know intellectually I can't control how they think and feel, but I tell this to my clients all the time. That doesn't mean we stop trying. Like so we do this.
Right.
Like this is what we do as humans. We try to manage other people's feelings. And so this is just what I'm admitting. This is an area where I'm currently growing and I'm really having a hard time not trying to control like the way I show up so that they et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's partly like what you said first. There is some aspect of like, I don't want to create a negative situation for my son. But I think for me, it is more that I am just afraid of kind of the impact of rocking the boat, essentially, of not kind of doing what is easy for them.
I love what you
Yeah.
said about trying to control or manage other people's feelings. And I feel like, I feel like I do that a lot. And part
Well,
of
that's
that is
ultimate.
that
Yeah.
the need to have that for safety, for
Yeah.
calmness, for a controlled situation where everybody feels okay. And I've had some validation, so it's kind of that feedback loop of I've had validation from some of these IEP members of, like, I really appreciate working with you. You're really just, that getting that positive feedback because I am, being however
Mm-hmm.
amenable or
Mm-hmm.
so it's like this weird feedback loop of like, it's working. Okay. I'll keep doing this. So
Totally right.
I don't know.
You're getting rewarded. No, yeah. I mean, people pleasing is all about trying to manage other people's feelings. And like I said, we all try to do this. And there's certain relationships that will want to do it more. And then, of course, if each of us goes back into our childhood, we can all understand kind of where this developed and all of that. We'll let that just be in the past for now. But it is work I think is valuable to do in terms of really noticing when we get triggered for this people pleasing part.
Yeah. Do you know who Gabor Mate is?
I don't think I've heard of them. No.
Is amazing. He's a doctor and he talks a lot about childhood trauma. He's got big T trauma, little T trauma, and how that works its way into our adulthood. And, we're kind of my understanding, he's got so much information out there, so many books and podcasts, interviews and lectures. He's just a really amazing person. He does a lot with addiction as well. But he talks about that, like these childhoods that we've had in this culture where our parents were taught to leave us in a room and let us cry it out or, not have our feelings and, all of these things. And we were taught that, if we showed up authentically, that wasn't working. That didn't work. And we needed to have connections with our parents for survival. And so we learned to manage other people's emotions and keep ours in check so that other people were happy, so that we were safe. And, so Anyway, if anybody's interested, Dr. Gabor Mate, I love him.
You do a really
Sorry,
good job
side
of
note.
explaining that. I'm glad you mentioned that. And you do a really good job of explaining it, because I've heard of many of the concepts, and we'll put his name in the show notes so that people can look him up if they want further resources, because I have a feeling people are like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's happening to me. Anything else in kind of wrapping up the conversation about really leaning into the uncomfortable spaces of who we are as moms in the IEP? Is there anything that you find that really helps you or supports you to kind of lean into that persistence that your daughter will get what she needs?
For me, this one stems from something happened that wasn't okay. And so I don't, you never want it to be coming from that place. Sadly, that's, and it wasn't anything totally horrifying. I just, it's not something it's her story to talk about, not mine. So yeah. So unfortunately it comes from that place of like, she was not safe and she needs to be safe. It was an eye opener for me, because I think also part of the reason why I didn't fight so hard was that I didn't necessarily believe it. I believed that she was safe, and she was for the most part, but kids are kids. And when you have a playground full of kids, and you're watching 20 of them, something's going to slip past you. And so she can't advocate for herself as well as she needs to. She can't really speak up. And so she needs somebody to do that for her. And I really realized that. And so now.
This reminds me of a conversation I had a few episodes back with Gay Grossman. And the way that she talked about advocating for her daughter was just so black and white. It was like, she needs to be safe. She needs to be able to have access to whatever the thing is. And that's kind of what I hear for you too, which is like, it's about protection. And like, it's just a non-negotiable, like my daughter will be protected. And this is the way, unless you can propose another way that you can guarantee that she will be protected, this is it. The bigger why, the thing that we're really committed to as moms, it's the thing that I think helps us be willing to step into the discomfort of like out of the people pleasing. I know that's what it is for me. Like even just, I was talking to a friend last night about the IEP and kind of tapped into the same energy of like, no, like I'm not at this point willing to have my son's life further compromised. Like he just like, he needs the support and like, I don't know. And like and there's a protection piece coming up for me that feels like it's very mama bear, but in a very empowered way. I think, I don't know if the school will agree, but, but it's kind of like, I'm at the point where I'm like, don't mess with my son. Like he's been through too much. Just don't, it's not going to be a fruitful, enterprise if we do that. Okay. Good. Well, I want to kind of shift in. My son is 13 and your daughter is 11, your daughter with disabilities. And these, for their various ages and genders, are big milestones, kind of entering into different seasons and phases of their life. And I'm noticing there's a big impact to me as I'm navigating this next level of adolescence with my son. So I just wanted to open a conversation and talk about what's coming up for you as you enter into what will soon be her teen years. How is it going for you?
She is definitely getting sassier and getting more stubborn. And, in a way, it's like Prader-Willi syndrome. And I don't totally understand this part. I haven't done all the research, but, puberty is not an easy experience, or it's not something that I think that a lot of kids have to be helped into puberty when they have PWS. And so part of me is like, signs of puberty are a good thing. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe she's going to do it on her own. That would be really exciting. But also, geez, just like some of the eye rolling. It's just been the last couple of weeks, like just sassing me in a way that I would never have. I'm not okay with. I don't know. So it's really challenging to my parenting style. My husband and I say we're both raised by East Coast parents, but we live on the West Coast. And so, it's funny, like our friends, I feel like sometimes we just have really clear boundaries. And she due to the nature of PWS and her processing and her understanding, sometimes like it's hard to set those boundaries. And so I'm having to really learn how to approach things differently. And then along with that this she's in this I started walking with Freya, the podcast, like 5 years ago. And before that, I was doing fundraisers. And so I've always been really open about it. My thing, back to that being safe, my thing was like, I need my community to know what this is. They need to understand her to help keep her safe. So I've always been very open about it, very vocal about it. And we've always talked to her about it as, this is part of who you are. It's just part of you. Other people have this or that, or, so just tried to kind of nonchalantly, or I don't know if that's the word, but not put too much emphasis on it, but let her know like bodies are different. And this is how yours is different.
Yeah.
And I've spoken with her class, but she's now in a place where she does not want to associate with it. It actually upsets her. She makes it very clear that she doesn't want me to talk about it in relation to her. And she's even had some tears about it. I was talking about wearing jeans for rare jeans on Rare Disease Day. And she said, I don't have a disease. And I said, you're totally right. You don't have a disease. I've always had kind of a weird thing with that.
I know
also.
That word is so weird, right?
Can we change the word? And, and then she just kind of spun off, saying, I don't want it. I want to get rid of it. I heard her say the other day, kind of this negative self-talk. She was frustrated and she stomped off to her room and she said, I'm broken. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever heard, especially because I've written a lot of poems about this. And the first poem I ever wrote, I used that phrase. I talk about being, that moment of having the doctor tell you that your child is broken. And of course, by the end, I say, she was never really broken. But like, as soon as I heard her say, I'm broken, I went to like, oh my God, did I put that phrase into her mouth? So yeah, just trying to learn how to navigate that, but also be her advocate. So I'm learning how to be her advocate without knowing that I'm being her advocate,
Yeah. And I think this is good to talk about because I think obviously it's so important to honor our children's wishes, their privacy, their lives, all the things. And I've always felt so fortunate that Levi loves to be talked about. He loves it. Like he always wants me to do the presentations to his class, and maybe that'll change one day. But I mean, he's 13, so we'll see how if he changes. Because I've always thought like, well, that would be really complex if he didn't like talking about this, if he didn't appreciate that part of him being known. And then there's the impact to you, right? There would be the impact to me. It's like, well, if it's like, yes, it's her story, but then it's also your story too. Like it very much is your story in terms of all the things that you take on to support her and, to be her mother. And what comes up for me as you share this story is really just the heartbreak that we have to be with as moms with these kids. And I won't share exactly what my son shared recently. It was this week's actually, but it was similar to what you shared that Freya was kind of contemplating. And when you hear these words come out of your children's mouth, along with all that they've already been through, I mean, I don't know if you would say this about Freya, but it's not easy to watch someone struggle in the ways that Levi does. In fact, it sometimes feels just cruel. It feels so hard to watch what they have to go through. And so when they say these things and it becomes so clear to us that they're grappling with the acceptance of, I was going to say who they are, but really more of the acceptance of the disabilities they have, man, it's hard. It's requiring me to like really go like a lot deeper into the sadness and the heartbreak of this part of our life. What do you notice for you? I mean, I know that you write poetry, and I know that that's a way you process. What do you find that this stage is bringing up for you?
Well, it has just kind of started. It's kind of a new thing. I just heard something when I went to pick her up from school yesterday. I I was told that she was saying something, about herself, how she felt about herself, and it wasn't good. And I remember reading in the beginning when I was first reading about Prader-Willi syndrome, and somewhere I read that, because it's a spectrum disorder, so it could have all, manifest in various degrees. And I remember reading that people with PWS who are of higher intelligence or are more prone to depression because they're more aware. They know that they're different. And Freya has always been, it's been fairly easy with her in a lot of ways. She, it hasn't affected her as intensely as it does affect other people. But I'm afraid that now we're coming into that place of like, oh, this is how it's going to affect her. Like, she's got a little sister who's 16 months younger than she is, getting asked for sleepovers and, starting to excel at gymnastics. So she kind of has this example of what her life could be. And I think she's starting to recognize that a little bit, maybe. I don't know. So it's hard. I have some really sweet friends who have daughters her age, and their daughters are kind of her protector, and they're very sweet with her. And so she does have a sleepover every now and then. They invite her over. So it's there, but it's like I want to see her have these authentic relationships that are like genuine, that aren't like the protector role. And these girls are really sweet with her, but it is kind of that protector big sister. And there was somebody that she was having what I saw seemed like a really authentic connection with, and it was just my favorite thing to see. That's who the incident was with. So like I'm a bit shaken on that. So like so I don't have it all. I don't have anything figured out now. Yeah, writing's always my go-to processing, but I think now I have a lot to learn, and now I need the advice and the feedback from people, from parents whose kids are older than mine. And so I have to do that in a place where it's not so public.
Yeah.
Because
That's a really good point. And I relate so much to what you're sharing because Levi, I don't know. I mean, he has so many disabilities in so many different areas, and he doesn't have a cognitive disability. So he's been acutely aware of what he has been through. And I even remember the difference of, when he was 2 and had his first surgery, he wasn't really aware of what was going on. 2-year-olds are 2-year-olds, but he had, the surgeries and radiation last year, and he was very aware. And gosh, going through those kinds of events with a 12-year-old and trying to explain to him what's happening, and then trying to talk with him about what this means for his life. And it is definitely pushing beyond what I was ready to do as a mom, for sure. And really asking me to do even more deep work than I had already done on myself, as I was sharing earlier, but just really processing heartbreak and allowing him to have the spectrum of feelings that he does without trying to fix them, which, my mama bear tendencies are very much to, and even speaking to what you're talking about from
Gabor Mate.
Yes. Okay. Now that you're saying it like that, I've seen his name. Anywho, from like what we bring into being a parent, like it's really challenging me right now. Yeah. And then just, the friend piece and seeing your kids having a very different experience with, than their siblings are. Same situation for us where, his older brother and his younger brother have a very different life than he does.
Yeah. And like to what you said, as far as, not just trying to fix everything, like how do you sit in that space where you see them grieving this experience, this type of life they don't get to have, and how can you like support them to experience that grief? Because we know like we need to feel our emotions. If we shove them down, they show up later. So like how do you support that in a way that is positive, and that bring them back around to kind of that authentic place of you can still be happy instead of just like kind of sugarcoating and be like, oh no, you're going to be fine. You're great, but really sit in that space with them and let them feel that and help kind of navigate them towards a genuine happiness.
Practice. And this is actually an area where, I can share some celebration in terms of, so pulling back to the curtains in terms of kind of some work we've done this year is beginning of last year, we got into some therapy. So Levi has a therapist, and the best structure we came up with was that I would sit with him, and support him. We do it over Zoom. So after school, we huddle up in my office and we get the Zoom on and we work with the therapist, and he has done profound work. I'm so proud of him. I feel that so deeply, and so have I. And the celebration is really kind of having his therapist acknowledge my growth taken. Because, in this work that we're doing, of course we're supporting him. And so, but she's witnessing me being his mom. Mm. And I can even remember back to, when he was first doing his work, I remember it's like, I almost feel like if I pay attention to my internal experience, I feel this almost like pulling towards him. Like I have to do something. What do I say? How do I comfort him? Like, how do I make this go away? Is essentially what I was feeling on the inside. And so, recognizing that is me trying to fix him, like that's the urge. It's my discomfort with his emotion. And the reason I say practice is because week after week, we're getting to kind of practice me being with his, whatever he has going on. And I can say that I've seen this evolution of me really wanting to fix and really kind of leaning in to try to fix in certain cases, I'm sure, to be able just to be a witness and to be with him in his emotion, which I will still say it's not easy, but I would say that it's a very different experience being able to be with him. And for me, it's a very deeply connecting experience. So that's like the only payoff I get is that I feel like I get to see him and be with him. And now that I'm even kind of processing with you, I'm like, I'm realizing that you really have to surrender control in those situations, right? Because, gosh, if I could control it, I would for sure be controlling right. How he'd be feeling, and I would fix all of it. But really just being able to sit with him and allow him to have his experience, really, I just have this like image of just like holding your hands open and just being with him, which is very vulnerable, but it's also very freeing. So anyhow, that's my, I think I share that because I think it's valuable to kind of look at the process. And it's taken about a year, but I feel like I said, I feel very proud because the therapist has even said like, well, you've done, I've seen you grow so much. And, it brings me to tears practically every time she says it, but it just feels great too, to also to see the capacity we have to grow,
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I feel like we kind of learned that in the beginning anyway, right? Like when we get our kids' diagnosis or whatever, and then we're thrown into this world, and it's a world we never would have thought we've been in, but we do it and we're there. And so, I think that's one of the first lessons we learn. And so it's important to carry that with you. Like, okay, I know this is challenging, but we'll figure it out. We keep figuring it out. So
we do. We keep figuring it out one step at a time. Well, speaking of figuring it out, you've figured out a way to bring your unique gifts and the way that you love to serve as a human, and you've created something for this community. And I would love to talk about that and really point any and all moms to this as a resource, because I'm an absolute stand that we as moms support ourselves. It's our job to get support. And so let's hear a little bit about Breathe, the new resource that you've created.
Yeah. So Breathe is an acronym, and it means bringing resources, education, and advocacy to homes everywhere. And it started, I was looking at a platform to host an online course. I wanted to do some online journaling workshops, because that's one of the things that I do for various groups. I recently taught workshops to a seventh, literally was eating his paper. So I think I'm going to stick with adults, but anyway, so it started from that. And I'm
sorry, the reception might've got cut out a little for a second there. So you said you were teaching a journaling group to kids, to children?
seventh graders. Yeah. So like
Seventh
12-year-olds.
grader. It's okay. And there was money in the paper. That's great. You're like, yeah, maybe adults are my thing. Okay, that's great. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So I was looking for a platform to host it. And I saw this platform that was like, you could host numerous classes, have various teachers. And I started thinking like, wow, how cool would that be to like go to a website designed for families of kids with disabilities and special needs, and I'm working on my language, atypical needs. Like I've been doing some research lately about the language. And anyway,
I'm going to do a podcast about that eventually, by the way.
Yeah. I want to as well. So I started thinking like that, like what a great resource that would be. So I started reaching out to past podcast guests that I've had and pulled it together. I don't know how, but I did. I launched on Tuesday. Well, I thought I was launching on Tuesday. I was like, I had it all built and I had been working on it for a few months. And then I was like, spent an hour and a half looking for like this big red launch button, because I was going to launch on Rare Disease Day. And I was so excited. It was so frustrating that I couldn't find it. And then I realized that I had been live the whole time.
That's so great. This is such a good story.
So thankfully,
big red launch button
or anything.
3, 2,
wasn't
1.
There. So Breathe is a website that has downloadable classes. So there's what it is now, and then my vision of what it's going to be. So at the moment, it has downloadable classes. Each of the classes has offered some free content. So there is a page of free content. There is a page of resources, which my friend is working on at the moment. There's some podcasts there, but we're going to grow that with organizations and books and things to add to that. And there's a blog on there as well. So every class is going to share a blog. Then me writing, because that's what I do. So there's a lot, there's a lot there. And there's also, which I'm really excited about, a community element on there. It's hard for me to figure it out because I need other people to get on there, but it looks like it's like a Facebook thing. Like you can get on there and you can comment and you can join groups. You could create a group. So like if you're taking one class, you could be in a group with that class and it's like commenting, responding to each other. So there's like this interactive community element. I have a soft spot for newly diagnosed parents. That's who reaches out to me the most through the podcast, through email and direct message. For me, that was such a hard time. I live in an area that's not really populated. I mean, I don't live in a big city. I live in far Northern California. And so I didn't walk out of the doctor's office into a community. I kind of had to create it. I just really remember that, like that isolation and that grief and all those feelings. My vision was, somebody's in the NICU in the middle of the night, they get a diagnosis and they're just, feel just totally, oh my God. And so they could go to this website and there's just this array of resources. I really am looking for parents to teach courses because I want it to be not just another string of professionals. I mean, I do have some professionals on there that teach an amazing class, which I'm really excited about, but I really want to have parents on there teaching classes, for a few different reasons. One, it's a way to make some income. And, we need those alternative ways to make income because a lot of us can't go get a job because we have to be our child's protector and supervisor, all that stuff. I have a journaling workshop for parents. There is a nutrition class taught by this woman, Kate Fox in Australia, and she mostly focuses on PWS, but she does talk about PWS in the class, but it's more, she also talks about inflammatory conditions and just kind of general practical nutrition for the family. There's a class on using improv for social and emotional learning, which was there's a lot of really fun games in that class. And I've been sharing it with my daughters and we've been having a good time with those.
That sounds so fun.
And I got my two younger ones, Freya and Rona, they created a workout video. So they did a workout video. That one's free, but it's super cute. It's good for like for some of the movements, like Freya does the modified movement of it. So I just thought it'd be fun because, especially with PWS, exercise and diet is such a crucial for managing the condition that I thought it maybe would be fun and inspiring for other kids with PWS. So, but the site is not just focused on PWS. Like it's for everybody. It's for moms, it's for dads, it's for siblings. I want to have some sibling stuff on there. And so it's growing, but it's essentially, I want it to be kind of like a one-stop guidebook that helps people feel connected to a community.
Yeah.
And they can find it at any time. And we'll have live classes eventually, but for now I want it to be downloadables, because our schedules are so wonky, and I know how hard it is to do something that's scheduled or to do something that requires childcare. So I wanted it to be as easy as possible for parents to learn skills, self-care, like really emphasize self-care. There's a class that's coming up, Gratitude for Caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Emily Felt is teaching that one, about like meditation and mindfulness and having gratitude. And so just overall, I want parents and siblings and caregivers to just feel better.
Yes. Well, you're talking about how it's developing. And from what I've already seen, like it's already robust is what I'm trying to say. And so you've done a great job of kind of getting it to be able to kind of launch. But I love hearing about your even bigger vision and ultimately what's calling you forward in terms of kind of creating this for the community. And I think all of us know that having these, well, it sounds almost like a gathering well from when you're describing it. It's a gathering well where we can come together with the power of community, when we each come with our gifts and our skills and our knowledge and all the things, then I think we're all better off. And so really I'm picturing this gathering well, because I was just talking to a mom I met this last week, and she was just kind of describing, she's 5 years in and like just learning about some of the services in California. And she's like, why did nobody tell me about this? And it's like this, she's a brilliant mom. Like, and I hope you're laughing because you're like, I feel her. It's like,
absolutely.
It is like, why we can go a different direction with that part of the conversation. We'll leave it there for now. But the point is that I do think that we as a community, as a sister, have to like hold each other by the hand and say, hey, do you know about this? Hey, do you know about this? Like, because no one else is doing it. And we don't want to leave our ladies out there stranded. We want to bring them in and support them. And I love your heart for the new moms, the ones that are just starting their journey. Because wow, I mean, I think you're enough in that I think you'll probably relate. Like there was nothing like this when we first started. There wasn't even a podcast, right?
When I started walking with Freya 5 years ago, there was one other podcast that I saw, because I did it kind of like, was this already out there? And I found one other podcast. I can't remember the name, but it's one of the ones that everybody knows. And I remember, thankfully, my daughter's condition is the PWS community is amazing. And there are parents who have come before me that have set up these associations, these organizations. So they find parents, they reach out to them, but I don't remember, like they called me in the beginning, as soon as I don't know, I got put on some registrar or whatever. I don't know. They called me. So I was really grateful for that. But that was all somewhere else. And it was like some email group. Do you remember that? It was before like social media.
I know my friend Jessica Pate talked about like, check, I was on a Yahoo group for like the early days. Yeah. I was never part of that. But I don't know how I missed that train. It sounds so overwhelming. I'm like, I don't even know if I could do that.
It's just a string of emails. Yeah, nothing like what there is today, with Facebook, and there's just a lot out there. So I'm grateful for what all is out there, but I'm really excited about this website and what it can become, what it is already. One of the things also that I want to have on there is like, I was just thinking about this today, of like all the little, because we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time, right? And I'm just thinking of like all the little therapies that I could do at home. So I want like other moms, other parents to have these therapies that like, while you're sitting there waiting for services, or, I live in an area where we can't keep a good OT or we can't keep a good PT, so I had to like do my own research, and I learned from, therapists that weren't here. Like, so I have that now. So I want to like make videos of like these little art projects that we do that are good for fine motor skills. And so I want to start adding stuff like that to the website as well, because I don't need that information anymore.
Like, I got to do something with this.
Else.
It's so valuable. I worked so hard to get it.
Yeah. And it should be easier than what it was for me and what it's been for a lot of parents. It just should be easier. And so if this makes it easier, that's my goal.
Well, thank you so much. And when you reached out, sharing this with me, I was like, yes, let's make sure we share this with everybody through an episode. And it was great to have another conversation with you. It was rich and meaningful
wonderful.
to me. Thank you. So clearly we will have all the links to the new website.
It's hard to find because breathe, of course, is
taken.
A common word. Yeah. So to find it at this point, it's www.breathe-community.com.
Okay, that's good. Well, it'll be easy to find it through a link. And so we'll have the link in the show notes and then we can put it on the socials and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and you have a new Instagram handle for it. I noticed that. So I followed that today. So we'll be able to tag that so people can more easily find it and then, bookmark it and use it as this like plethora of resources. Thank you so much for sharing that in your heart. And
can I say also real quick, if somebody is out there and they feel like, if you want to check out the site, if you feel like you have something to offer, we're looking for more classes. So if somebody has a class that they've already made and they want to host it, or if this inspires somebody to say like, oh, wow, I have this skill and I want to share this, we're looking for more classes because I know there's so much information out there. So I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. It's almost like, hey, bring your best dish to the party, like it's a potluck. Yeah. It's a potluck of resources and everybody has, if you're not a cook, bring the napkins. And so, but everybody has something that they can share and contribute.
Nice.
All right. Well, we'll see you. Maybe we'll go for a third time around, maybe next year. But congratulations. And thank you so much for sharing yourself and your heart and passion with this community.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. It's been nice.
One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.